Ko hikurangi te maunga, ko waiapu te awa, ko Ngāti Porou te iwi, ko Ariki Tibble tōku ingoa.
My background was not in mountain biking before I got involved with Crankworks. In fact, I'd only ever organised a single mountain bike event for local schools. I think only 70 kids had turned up to it, and then it ended up being a bit of a flop, which sounds shocking, but I did do other events that were more successful than that one. I grew up in Hamilton. My memories are primarily about playing with my friends and being out till dark. Very much into athletics, playing sport. It was a challenging time for all of us. I think I ended up moving out at about 14 or 15 years old and going flatting with my brother, who was 10 years older than me. That lasted for a few months before he ended up leaving New Zealand. I ended up staying on flatting with his 20 to 30-year-old flatmates. That was me 15 through to the end of high school. You grow up pretty quick when you're the backstop to yourself. There were a couple of teachers who, I guess, saw potential in me and went out of their way to help me further myself. Packed our bags after finishing high school, and we jumped on the plane and went down to Otago for what felt like a world of possibilities. I ended up playing a game of rugby and receiving a concussion that had pretty lasting effects for me. I was diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome and I couldn't continue with my study, so I ended up taking a bit of a break for a few months. But an experience that really equipped me with a lot of skills for self-managing and looking after myself. I was able to get back to uni to finish up. I got a call one day from my brother who had decided to move to Rotorua and set up a restaurant. He asked if I would come and be part of that with him, and I left Dunedin loving it. I remember driving up over the hills on the way out listening to Hope by Fat Freddy's drop, crying my eyes out because I did not want to leave. Hard to tap out when you're in love with something, but yeah, really glad that I did. I met Loss at a tourism function. She was just all smiles and very bubbly and made me laugh. We have 3 daughters, around 20 years. Some of the locals, I remember going mountain biking with them for my first time, and I went over the handlebars on Dipper and broke my collarbone, which is a shameful thing to admit. A few years later, as I decided to make my mountain biking comeback, I lined up a jump at the top of Taniwha. A friend said, "All you got to do is hit it with speed, Ari." And so I said, "Okay." And Loss yelled out to me, "Don't do it, Ari, you'll break your collarbone." And I remember saying, "Watch this." And then I went and I broke my collarbone and got her to call the ambulance. She cast some sort of spell. During that 12-week period where I was off work, a job came up at Sport Bay of Plenty. And I guess that was where I whet my appetite on all things event, whether that was logistics, operations, scheduling, communications, governance. Been called in to work for multi-day adventures on a couple of tours. And that's where I ended up spending time in a work capacity with Tuck. We'd met at Lava Bar on the dance floor, actually. I guess 2 Māori boys who'd grown up in the same era, who loved Michael Jackson, and I guess we recognised similar dance moves in each other. We're fast friends. Come 2014, I get a call from Tuck saying, "Bro, how would you like to come and work on delivering Crankworks with me?" I said, "Sounds awesome." And then I proceeded to go and Google search Crankworks because I had no idea what it was. We had 6 months to raise $1.6 million. We had to build the tracks from scratch. So that was about finding sponsors and investors to get involved and believe in this vision, and then build a team, execute the event a few months later. It was terrifying going into it. We wanted to really retain our sense of self, so we would turn up to business meetings in our jandals and singlets and just a couple of Māori boys turning into corporate offices and talking to people in suits and trying to convince them that this event wasn't going to be a smaller version of what happens in Whistler, that it was going to be the same size jumps, the same caliber of athletes, the same quality of production, and trying to convince them to part with large sums of money to invest in this event, and then turning that investment into benefits for Rotorua. You have these moments where it's really important that you bring your absolute best to the table, and you can either deploy yourself or somebody around you who's better at it than you are. Then you win those moments, and then once you start stringing those together, you find yourself collectively in a place you never thought you could be. And that feels very much like the story of Crankworks. There's times when Dave Donaldson's had to be the guy. You push him to the front because he's got the skill set for that moment. In the past, it's been Tuck. Sometimes it's been members of the team in the office. If it was just individuals behind it, we'd be chewed up and spat out. I feel like what Crankworks is to anyone is relevant to how they get involved in the first instance. A really easy answer is to say that it's about professional mountain bikers riding in broadcast events that get shown across the entire planet, and it's about the elite of the elite. And that's one answer. I think in our office we spend 99% of our time talking about the other things that the event is. It's a volunteer program with 280 plus volunteers, the majority of whom are from Rotorua. And so for those volunteers, Crankworks is a chance to come and make new friendships. If you're a young child, Crankworks is a chance to come up on track and to watch some of the world's best, and then to jump on your own bike and do what feels like is the same thing 50 meters away. If you're a supplier or services, it's a place to flesh out your skill set in an environment that's close to home, but that demands a world-class level of service. And I feel like explaining it as a 5-day mountain bike festival probably doesn't do it justice. We have staged 9 events. I think it took us a couple of years to get to a point where the event wasn't turning a deficit. We run close to the bone. The purpose of the event isn't to make profit, it's to sustain itself. It's set up as a not-for-profit company, and we're coming up for our 10th anniversary next year. So we've shepherded the festival through the last few years of what's probably the toughest time that events have seen in my living memory. I feel like we're on the bounce back, and really excited about what next year has to offer. And we know that other regions around the planet would just chomp at the bit to have a shot at running a Crankworks event. We've had this opportunity to hold the torch up and return those benefits year on year for the last 9 years, and we have it through to 2027 is extraordinary. I feel very privileged to be in the position I am to kind of play a role in keeping that torch lit and held up as long as we can. Seldom do I see anything meaningful created by any individual, and I'm always grateful for being able to have amazing people around me